Greetings, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are here to bring light to the life-transforming act of cornea donation during this time of Donate Life Month, which celebrates organ, eye, and tissue donation. I'm Rebecca Grossman, the Family Services Manager.
Hi, and welcome everyone. I am Stacy Dolman, the Family Services Specialist. And again, welcome and thank you for joining us for Stories of Transformation.
So all of you joining here tonight represent our whole donation community. We have donor families, cornea recipients, Sight Life staff, and our partners. In cornea donation, the decisions and the actions one makes, the decisions and actions you and your loved one made truly transforms lives. Now, I can sit here and say that, but what does that really mean? What does a life look like when impacted by corneal blindness? And what does that life look like after vision has been restored? Well, that's what tonight is all about. We're going to hear from 3 cornea recipients, David in Washington State, Rosemary in Washington State, and Peter in Wisconsin. They will each share their story along with some pictures of their lives, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for questions.
Yes, and we are here to celebrate donation and the life-changing gift of a cornea transplant. We also are here to honor and remember the cornea donors and their families that made that possible. Every story of transplantation begins with a family in a time of grief and loss, saying yes to donation. That choice is an act of compassion that requires courage, strength, and generosity. It's one that we cherish and celebrate. Because of that family making the choice to give, a new chapter can begin in the story of a stranger. And all of us at Sight Life are so grateful for this opportunity to share 3 of those stories with you tonight. But before we do begin, let's go over just a few pointers for everyone using Zoom, and we'll share more about tonight's program. You are on mute and your cameras are off, so we can't hear you or see you. We'll begin with our recipient speakers telling their stories, followed by a question and answer segment where they will answer your questions about their experience. Unfortunately, our first speaker, David, will not be able to stay online for the Q&A because he has another commitment tonight. But if you have a burning question for David, let us know and we can pass it along. You can also ask your questions in the chat box. Our Sight Life staff that have been there greeting you tonight in the chat box are available to answer questions as well.
All right, let's practice using the chat box and learn a little bit about each other. As you can see on the screen, there is a message bubble that you can use to open the chat. You just click on it. You have 2 choices after clicking. Next slide, yeah. So you want to make sure that you choose all panelists and attendees. And so that is so everybody can read your message. All right, if we're ready, here's a question. Using the chat box, please share how you are connected to donation and where you're joining us from. Are you a donor family, a recipient, a partner, a donation advocate? And you may have a couple of different identities. Maybe you're a donor family and a partner. Maybe you're, I would hope that some of you are also donation advocates. But yeah, using the chat box, please share where you're calling from or Zooming from. So we have somebody from Pennsylvania, Joshua, Lisa, I'm sorry, Lisa. My dad passed away in November and his corneas were donated. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Cynthia is here from Edmonds, just north of Seattle. We have another person from Seattle, Seattle is definitely here tonight. My husband donated his corneas. Oh,
Saw Heather.
you go right ahead.
I saw Heather earlier tonight from Multicare, one of our partner hospitals. So thank you for being here. It's wonderful to have you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We have a lot of people from this area. We have somebody from Shoreline. We have somebody from Montana. Oh, one of our staff members. Really glad you're here. Somebody from North Central Washington. Wow, they're coming on quickly. So I'm sorry if I don't get to everybody. I sort of feel like I'm a Peloton instructor right now, going through all the people. We have Mike from Spokane, who is a donor family. Thanks for being here. My husband, Richard, who passed away in February 2020. I'm from Pennsylvania. Thank you, Diane, for being here. Oh, hi, Diane. I know you. So nice to see everyone. All right, let's go on to our next question.
It is. It's great to see so many people here, so many donor families here. That's absolutely beautiful. And now we are going to ask you another question, but asking you to use your imagination. If you were to lose your vision, what do you think one thing would be that you would miss seeing? And please share your answer in the chat box. Rebecca, what do you think you would miss?
Well, I am planning a Europe trip this summer, and I just think about how different that trip would be if I did not have sight. I could still enjoy it by eating lots of food, of course, but just how much that would impact going to a new place.
Yeah, and some of the answers in the chat box are just some things that are so meaningful. Things like seeing my grandchildren's faces, seeing nature, my family. Yeah,
those I love.
My cat. Absolutely, I would miss seeing my pets. Yes.
Yes, my cat's faces. Totally get that one. Family and friends, spontaneous road trips, for sure. And even the driving of those road trips as well.
Yeah, seeing the ocean, that's, really special.
The hummingbirds. My mom and I both loved hummingbirds.
One of my favorite things about spring is seeing those hummingbirds come out.
Yeah, and I saw spring daffodils a while up. Yeah, the ocean, creation. Lovely.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for sharing that. Those are all really special things. All extremely meaningful. Well, now, on that note, I would like to introduce our first recipient, David. David is a retired school principal in Washington State. So David, I invite you to go ahead and turn on your camera. You can unmute yourself and please share your story.
Well, thank you, Stacy, and thank you also, Rebecca, and to the whole team at SightLife for bringing us together this evening. I realized I was going blind 12 years ago. I was leading a staff meeting in the front of the school library, and I realized I could only see about 2/3 of the way back into that group of teachers that were there with me. I couldn't read their body language. I didn't know, were they understanding what we were talking about? Did I need to go back over material again? Think about how essential vision and sight is to somebody who is a school leader. A parent would come into the school office and say, hey, I need to take my daughter out of school for a dentist appointment. And I would say, I know your daughter's class is in the cafeteria. I'll head on over. I'll get her for you and you can take her off campus. And I'd walk into the cafeteria and I couldn't see more than halfway across the room. Or maybe there was a student who had made a bad decision at recess and was in my office. And I didn't have the ability to look into that child's eyes or read that child's face and think to myself, is this the time that this child really needs to understand the value of telling the truth and working through a problem? I couldn't read language, body language that way. And as the days grew shorter, I realized I didn't feel safe even commuting to work and back. Here in Washington State, it gets dark, it gets cold pretty quickly into the fall. My wife and I had discussions about how I could maybe find another way to get to school or to get back home every day rather than be behind the wheel of the car. I talked to my eye doctor. My eye doctor said, yeah, David, the fronts of your eyes, your corneas, are getting thinner than they should, and that's very unnatural. But what's happening is we all have fluid inside of our eyes that has a certain amount of pressure in there, and when the front of your eye, that windshield basically on the very front of our eyes, gets too thin, the pressure inside of my eyes was pushing outwards, and that was creating the inability for my eyes then to successfully focus, for me to be able to see. And so I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to do at that point. I know that I started teaching back in 1974. I made an entire career out of serving children and working with other school staff and with parents and families and school district staff to try to help children become capable and to feel confident and to create systems and schools where the community understood their children were being well served, that parents were proud of, where children learned how to be honest and how to talk to each other and solve problems together. And the idea that my eyes were failing me and that I was going to have to step away from that long career really was very difficult for me to consider accepting. The same year that I started to go blind, our Board of Education here in our state created a recognition for schools that were achieving at an exceptional level. They identified, using state assessments, the top 3% of all the schools in the state. And what they wanted to do was use those as an example for other schools to say, well, what is working? And let's take a look at those. My school was one of those that was selected that first year, even though we had 300 more students than the facility was designed for, even though the children attending that school would go home to homes that maybe spoke 50 or more different languages other than English. We were doing a successful job helping children achieve and learn and work together cooperatively. The studies showed that in a 10-month school year, the average child in the school that I was leading was learning about the equivalent of about 14 months worth of material. So we became a place, a model that other people wanted to know more about. We had teams of educators visiting us from Georgia, from Virginia, from throughout the United States. But imagine being at the top of a team of 100 adults working hard and working together to serve a whole community and thinking you no longer have the ability to do that kind of work. We all know the name Lou Gehrig, and I did some reading about him. Lou was at the top of his game. He was an all-star player. He led his team to the World Series 6 years in a row. In one game, he hit 4 home runs. But in the middle of a season, a winning season, he took himself out of his team's lineup because he had a neuromuscular disease and he could no longer feel confident that he could serve his team the way that they needed him to serve. I felt I was facing that same kind of decision in my career, that I had the skills, I had the ability, I had the experience, but I could not see. And you have to see to keep children and adults safe on a large campus. Now, I'm not Lou Gehrig. And in fact, I'm lucky enough to have the resources here in the Seattle area to be able to go to an eye doctor and to have an eye doctor refer me to somebody who could help me out, including Sight Life. What happened was I was referred to a surgeon, Dr. Tully Rostoff, who partners with Sight Life. And that opened up this whole team of individuals who helped me. Somewhere there was a donor or a donor's family that made a decision and said, these corneas we will donate into this whole chain of help and care. And somewhere there were medical technicians that very carefully and respectfully harvested those corneas. And then other technicians that transported them and shaped them, perhaps with a laser, so that then inspected them and made sure that they were ready to be implanted. And then one day I found myself on an operating table, lying on my back, and my surgeon very carefully and very accurately used a laser to slice away the front of my right eye and to replace it with a cornea that had been donated by someone, stitched it in place with 14 tiny little hand-placed stitches, sutures around my eye, bandaged up my eyes, sent me home. And within a week, I was able to take off those bandages and I could see so much better. My eyesight in my right eye was restored. And really within about a year, we were able to perform that very same operation on my left eye, again, with another donated cornea from someone who said, yes, I'll let this cornea, this piece of tissue that I no longer have a need for, go into use with someone else. You know, I grew up in a family. I'm one of 4 boys. My parents were missionaries in Hawaii way back before Hawaii became a state. And we didn't have a whole lot of resources, but I know that together as a family, we worked hard to care for each other. And for years growing up, when one of my 2 older brothers would outgrow some clothing, it would be handed down to me. It was still usable. And when I had access to that clothing, I wore it and it worked. It took care of me. It enabled me to then to be able to go to school, to go out and play in the yard and do all those other things. And in some ways, I feel as though those donated corneas are the very same kind of how a family of mankind hands things off to each other, so that if it's no longer useful to one of us, it can be useful for someone else, because it is still useful. You know, as a school team, as school educators, we would teach children that every act of kindness created a ripple effect that made the entire classroom, the entire school, a better place. All it takes is each one of us thinking about, how can I be more kind today? What could I do that would be beneficial for myself and for the people that are around me? And when everyone acts together as that kind of a community, great things happen. And that's exactly what happened for me as a recipient of a donor cornea. And it completely changed my life. I was able to stay as a school principal for another 7 years. I didn't have to walk away the way Lou Gehrig did. And every one of those 7 years, again, the school where I worked was recognized by our State Board of Education as an exemplary school. There's no other school in the state that's ever been honored that many years in a row. And in fact, at one point, I was asked to go to Washington, D.C. and to speak to folks in our National Department of Education and spend time at the White House and talk about what is it that public education needs right now, and what makes exemplary education happen for children. And over again, the message that I conveyed was, it takes everyone working together. It takes a community that cares about public schools. It takes parents who are committed to their children's education. It takes staff members who are well prepared and educated, who collaborate in order to help a child develop. And most of all, it takes hardworking students who have a belief in themselves. But it takes everyone having a common mission. And that's really what this is all about right now. All of us on this Zoom call, we're all sharing in one way or another in a common mission, a mission to figure out how, whether we're a donor and we're trying to make a decision about whether to be a donor or not, or more importantly, and how difficult it sometimes is as a donor family to say, will we make a decision to donate tissue that we know can be of value to someone else? Or to all the technicians and the skilled individuals at Sight Life, and to the surgeons that are around the world, or to those people who provide financial support for Sight Life as well. All of us are a community, and by working together, we make this place a better place than anyone else. So to each one of you who's joining in this evening, to the Sight Life staff and everyone else, I just am so very, very grateful to be part of that community and have this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you so much for the people who cared for me and enabled me to continue to serve for another 7 years instead of stepping away as a school principal. So thank you, Stacy, and thank you, Rebecca, for this chance to talk.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you. And you talked about the ripple effect. And yes, donation creates a ripple. In David's story, we heard, yes, it impacted him personally, but think of all the children that he was able to serve because he regained his sight. And another thing that I heard that I thought was really impactful to me was how he couldn't read, or you couldn't read the emotions of a child. And yes, you know, if we don't have sight, we can't see the faces, but how much body language and facial language really tells us what's going on internally. So yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for all you do for Sight Life. So now I have the pleasure of introducing our second cornea recipient storyteller, Rosemary in Washington State. Rosemary is both a cornea recipient and a donor family. Tonight, she will share her story with us, along with pictures of her father, who gave 2 individuals a gift of sight. Rosemary, please turn on your camera, unmute, and tell us your story.
Am I on?
You are on.
Okay, here goes. I'm speaking to you today as a cornea recipient, but there's another connection I have to donation that is just as important, that of a donor family. Like many of you, my introduction to Sight Life was in 2014 when my father, Daryl, passed away. That day, while driving home from the hospital, I pulled over when I got this call and was asked to donate my dad's corneas. I got the phone call. I was tired, emotional, and physically, I was shocked. It was a surprise that he could donate anything at his age and as being such fragile health. I couldn't believe that he could help in this way. I thought of the man. He was generous and kind-hearted, and I remembered that he was a registered donor of Alaska, and I knew his wishes was to help others. I honored that wish, knowing that it had been his choice. His cornea donation allowed 2 people to see sight. While it brought me some comfort, it wasn't in the front of my mind during my grief. At the time, I had no idea that I'd eventually need cornea transplants myself. It was several years after my father's death that I began having a hard time seeing clearly, and my eyesight was becoming blurry. There was a lack of color and light in my vision, and focusing was difficult. Everything seemed off. I completely lost vision in my left eye, and I was only able to see gray and shadows. In my work at the Department of Social and Health Services, where I help provide social and financial support to our Native American community, where I help provide I helped provide social and financial support to Native Americans living in Seattle, I needed the biggest computer monitors that I could get. I didn't want to open to my coworkers or to my family about my struggles in this experience. I didn't want to stop my work as a Native American community, in the Native American community. I didn't want to lose my ability to take care of my son or have him take care of me. I didn't want to relearn how to live my life without sight. It was then when I was diagnosed with my eye disease that would lead to blindness. I was told the only way to save my sight was with a cornea transplant in each eye. When I found out that this was possible because of the generosity of a cornea donor, I was astonished and I was shocked. And I was really overwhelmed. I thought, is this for real? My amazing and talented surgeon, Dr. Gillette, assured me that this miracle was possible. I remembered my dad, that I donated his corneas, the same thing I needed to regain my vision. I thought of my family pulling over. I thought of the families that pulled over the side of the road, getting that call just like me. I was emotionally and broken down in tears. After surgery, the difference was like day and night. How clear and focused my vision was, how different everything was, the colors, the light, the shapes, and everything. It was like I stepped into another world, looking into my son's eyes, seeing his face clearly, has been the most meaningful challenges I experienced. I'm not able to spend time. I'm now able to spend time all the time I want with my friends and family. Before surgery, it was difficult because I lacked focus in my vision, which caused a lot of headaches. I was able to drive again. I had to stop when I began losing my vision. I can enjoy my hobbies and my puzzles. When I visit my family in Alaska, I can completely appreciate the amazing beauty of our nature around me. And now I even ride my bike in Seattle. I'm a private person, and it took some time before I was ready to tell anyone about my vision loss or receiving a transplant. But now, as a Native Alaska and Hispanic woman, I am honoring its importance to my community and to my culture. I share my story so that people can have a better understanding of cornea donations and how much it changed my life. I want to send my deepest gratitude to the cornea donors and their families for a wonderful and generous gift their loved ones and you have given me. This gift is like none other. It has blessed me by restoring my life and my vision. You and your families will also be a part. You and your family will also be a part of my life, and I will honor and always cherish that. I am forever thankful to give and to receive such a precious gift. It is truly unique and rare that I would be someone blessed by another family's decision to do the same. Because of this, I can truly say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I want to take the time to thank Sight Life, Rebecca and Stacy for reaching out to me, for giving me the opportunity to talk about my cornea donation and me receiving corneas, because it was a unique situation. I didn't know much about support for getting my corneas as other donations for liver or lungs. And I reached out to Sight Life after a couple of years, and they were able to reach back to me when I told them my story. My heart and my blessings go to all you people that are watching today, and also to the people in the future that can donate corneas and the recipients. But without Rebecca and Stacy, I wouldn't be able to share my story. I want to say bless you all and thank you for your time. I'm done.
Rosemary, thank you so much for sharing your story and for such kind words. It's truly a gift and a blessing for us to have you here. I was extremely touched just hearing the love and emotion that you have for your father and for your son and your community and all the people that you helped and have continued to help through your work and now by sharing your story. Thank you so much for being brave and sharing that tonight.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, now I want to go ahead and introduce our final recipient speaker tonight, and that is Peter. Peter is a retired physician living in Wisconsin. Peter is also a mountaineer. He's a pilot, and he's a talented photographer. So along with some of his really great photos, he will share his story with us. So Peter, we invite you to go ahead and turn on your camera, unmute, and please begin.
Oh, there we go. Well, it sounds kind of corny, but it is an absolute thrill to see you guys tonight. And I mean that exactly as it is, because if I had not received the donation of the corneas that I'm using, I would be totally blind. Later in my career, in my mid-60s, I developed an oddball corneal disease called Irrido corneal endothelial syndrome, which the cornea specialists abbreviate ICE or just call it ICE. I won't go into details because I don't know enough about them, but I will tell you from my end, it's kind of like having a sheet of wax paper in front of your eyes. Yes, there is light. Yes, there is some color. Yes, there is motion, but I couldn't see my wife's face. I could not see my kids or grandkids. I would go to one of the grandkids' baseball games and I could tell that there were bodies moving out on the baseball field, could not see numbers on the backs of their uniforms, had to get my grandson about 2 feet away from me before I could see that it was him. So the transplant was nothing short of miraculous, because just like some of the other folks here, about 2.5 years ago, I voluntarily stopped driving because I realized that I was no longer safe. And as of March this year, I got cleared by my eye care team to get back driving. And I'll tell you what, that is a heck of a development. I'm very happy about that. You're looking at guys here from my Civil Air Patrol squadron. I am a pilot, although I'm not currently flying, but after the first of my transplants, I was able to take the required evaluations by the Federal Aviation Administration and get cleared to fly again. And that was just amazing. So with a pair of cornea transplants, no, I'm not going to go back to flying. My vision is now about 20/60, which is legal for driving, and I feel safe during the day. But that's fine. I'm retired, and my wife has been so supportive that if we need to drive somewhere else, she can take care of that. But in my work as a physician, I spent about 15 years, I think, in the emergency department of a small community hospital. And one of the jobs was, if we had someone who came in and did not survive whatever issue they were suffering, I was one of the people who would go into the family room and ask if they would consider donation. So I have a 2-part involvement with the team as well. It's a very difficult conversation. And as donor families, I know that it's hard for you guys. And if it makes you feel any better, it's hard for the guys at my end of it as well. Because, well, the way I describe it is, I'm the captain of the ship that attempted the rescue but didn't. And once I've told the family if their loved one has died, I let that sink in. I let the nurses comfort the family, and then I come back in and say, would you consider donating organs or corneas, because your loved one can make a big difference in someone else's life. And sometimes they say yes. Sometimes they're so upset that they just, well, I had a lamp thrown at me once. That was kind of an exciting afternoon. But this is a hard decision, and to the donor families that made that decision, I am very grateful, because I went to a hockey game. I got 3 of my grandsons are hockey monsters up here in Green Bay. That's a very popular sport. And I went to a game and I could actually see the puck. That was so cool. It was like night and day. Just being able to see that degree of detail was a thrill, because before I got my transplants, I would get a little snarly and owly because my wife loves the scenery and she's driving, go, oh, look, there's a flock of turkeys. I'm going, why are you telling me? And I was kind of grumpy about it, but this is what happens to you. You know, your life really shrinks. I mean, I was basically housebound, except when I could get my wife to drive somewhere, and that was tough. I got very good with my sense of touch because I had to kind of braille my way around the house. And I got very good at coming up to what I was pretty sure was a door, but then I'd use my forearm to kind of find the door frame so I could go through it without walking into the door, which I have done. And that should give you a feel for the degree of vision loss that corneal blindness can cause. And well, because I'm a doc and I do lots of patient education, I'll just give you a little piece of trivia about corneas that not everyone appreciates. Somewhere between middle school and high school science, most of us learned that it's the clear lens of the eye that focuses the light, which is true. But in terms of the power to bend light, the cornea actually bends the light about 10 times more than the lens does. The cornea's job is to get that light back to where it can be then fine-tuned focused by the lens of the eye. So the cornea is the gatekeeper for everything. And if the cornea is defective, you're out of luck. Your sight is like looking through wax paper. I want to make a special thanks to the Sight Life team, and I'm going to give a shout out to one group that also plays a huge role in this. Because I'm sure you're aware, Green Bay and northern Wisconsin are fairly famous for bad winters, and we get one every year. I had a couple of my transplants during the winter, and the local Lions Club is the agency that brings the tissue from the bank to the surgical center. And I also want to give a shout out to the Lions who braved some really ugly weather on a couple of occasions to get the tissue into the hands of Dr. Meyer, who was my cornea surgeon. And those guys do it for the joy of doing it because they don't get paid, they volunteer, and they usually have to, well, our surgical center starts at 7 in the morning. So these guys pick up the tissue in Madison, which is, let's call it 2 hours away. So I don't know how early they have to get up to bring the tissue into the center, but they do it and they're as dependable as can be. So thank you to them, as well as to Stacy and Rebecca and Erica and all the other Sight Life folks who have made this happen. That's my story, and I will be happy to stick around and answer questions.
Thank you, Peter, so much. I was really touched when you talk about, well, first of all, you say something about knowing what corneas are because you were taught in school. I was not told what as cornea was in my school, so maybe that says something about my science teacher then. But you taught a lot just now, so thank you for that. But when I heard you talk about moving around the house using touch, and just how incredible that must be to like have to do that. That really is a great illustration of how much we use our sight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you that walking through certain rooms, if you have your left foot just straddling the edge of the area rug, you will navigate safely through the room without banging into anything.
Wow.
And I still kind of laugh about that because if I haven't got my contact lenses in, sometimes I have to do that.
Well, I want to thank David, Rosemary, and Peter so much for sharing their stories. Let's give them thoughts of a round of applause, because I know you'll be, clapping and they can't hear it because you're on mute, but I'm sure that's what you are doing right now. And also I see a lot of thanks in the chat box to all of you. So thank you. So now, Rosemary, you can go ahead and turn on your camera and unmute yourself along with Peter, and we are going to open it up to Q&A. We invite our attendees, so our participants, to ask questions using the chat box. Stacy and I are going to read those aloud and ask our recipients to share their answer if they would like to. So I invite all of you using the chat box to ask a question.
Well, and I see a question that came in through the Q&A.
Oh, great.
A question from Rhonda. So to Rosemary or Peter, I invite either of you to answer this. When you get new corneas, are you able to get contacts or any other kinds of corrections? So I assume contacts or glasses, or any of those possible after a transplant?
Yes.
I can answer that.
My video won't come on.
Is Rebecca on? Because I don't know if I'm walking on her or not. Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Well, for me, when I got my corneal transplant, the issue was that the cornea was not perfectly spherical when it was put in place. So not only could I get contacts, I had to have contacts. Because like I mentioned, it's really the cornea that does the heavy lifting as far as focusing light, and the lens does the fine tuning. I was seeing pretty well. After the transplant, I was like 2150, but that's not legal to drive. I had to wait 6 months, but my cornea team fitted me with some hard contacts that actually changed the shape of the cornea. It was like, holy smokes, this is cool. I was well, my optometrist put just a non-focusing contact in just to reshape the cornea to make sure he had the right fit. And I was reading like the 2150 line, and he says, okay, I'm going to put the lens in, and I'm going to step out of the room to kind of let it settle in place, and then we'll come back and see what we're doing here. And the door closes, and my wife was sitting over by the side, and I'm going, hey, check it out. And I was reading like 3, 4, 5 lines down the chart with no correction except reshaping my cornea. And what I love about that is that every morning I put those contacts in, and I just go, hello world. It is fabulous. So there.
Great. Thank you, Peter. That is great. And another question somebody asked kind of as a follow-up is if that's always necessary for people to need any type of additional glasses or corrective surgeries. And I think the answer to that is maybe. Everyone's different.
Everyone is different. Everyone is different. I am not wearing glasses. I used to wear trifocals, and I have to have readers, but hey, small price to pay.
Rosemary here with me. So the question is, can you and do you ever need to wear corrective lenses or glasses after a transplant? And by looking at you, yes.
Yes, I do. But just recently, Dr. Gillette, my doctor, gave me go ahead to get regular glasses. But it's I couldn't do it for a while because I was having some challenges with the stitches. They kept breaking. So he wanted me to wait out till I was cleared out. So now I can go buy glasses this month, but I still need some glasses, and reading I will always need, he said, but I was offered also to get contacts for my eyes, not only to see, but to project the corneas. Yeah. And they were really big, like, wow, to put in and stuff like that. But unfortunately, I didn't feel comfortable with that decision. But you will need something to read with or something, you know, but I can see clear, I can see far away. But when I'm reading something close, then I will need them, you know, which is, you know, I'm happy with that and things. And then when I walk out to go back to Ballard, it's like so beautiful. I just see everything I can read and see and not trip. Stuff. Yeah, you will. Some people are different though. It could be different for everyone.
Yeah. Somebody asked here, do the donated corneas that are put into the recipient last a life, all their life? So I want to start off by asking both Peter and you, when did you get your transplant? So how long have you had the corneas? If you recall.
18. I had mine going on 4 years.
4 years.
What, 3.5 years or so. Yeah, you can't do them back to back. You have to wait. I did one, my left eye, the one that I didn't have sight in. And then I had to wait because you have to do the eye drops. You have to do seeing the doctors all the time. And then once I was cleared out of my left eye, then I flew back from Alaska to Seattle to do my right eye, you know, and just now I can see really good with both eyes. It's called eagle eyes.
Peter, when did you get your transplants?
Well, actually, I've had a grand total of, I think, 8. Because when I first lost vision, it was only on the left. And they did what's called a DSEC, which is a partial corneal transplant. I had 3 of those, which survived anywhere from 6 months to 1.5 years. And Dr. Meyer said, all right, enough of this. We'll go full thickness penetrating keratoplasty or a PK. And that was, I think, 8 years ago.
Wow.
And that was pretty well. And then 2 years ago, the other eye started to go. He did a DSEC there. It lasted 4 months maybe. And he said, well, I'm not going to do that again. Let's just go with the full thickness, which I was completely on board with. And so that one I got about 1.5 years ago, and going through all the process. There were a whole bunch of complications because when you get a transplant, you need to use cortisone eye drops. Cortisone is notorious for causing glaucoma and cataracts, and I got both. And so I had to have cataract surgery and glaucoma surgery. But, you know, I am one of the frequent flyers at Green Bay Eye Clinic. And so, you know, I keep teasing them that I gotta get a punch card. I get a free toaster oven after a couple of more visits, right? And they laugh and say, "Oh yeah, I am."
So but, it sounds like it varies. Like the other question. I mean, I'm not a cornea expert, but from the people I've talked to, other recipients, sometimes it is a lifetime. Sometimes it's 4 years, 2 years. It really does vary to person. And yes. I'm really glad that you brought up just the care that need to put in after a transplant to that cornea. I mean, you have to take those drops.
Thankfully, you have to ready for a commitment.
Yeah,
you know, and that commitment is going to save your sight, and that was something I didn't want to lose again.
Yeah,
you know, and stuff. So
yeah,
there are challenges, but you
like your eye surgeon because you're going to be seeing him for the rest of your life.
Yeah, but mine been good except the stitches. Yeah, but mine have been, you know, once a stitch breaks and Dr. Gillette takes it right out, my vision comes. It just refocuses, like we were talking about. So yeah.
I was lucky. I didn't have any trouble with the stitches at all, so I feel fortunate there.
That's really good.
I appreciate that from both of you sharing that, because another question I've seen come up a few times is, how do you keep the cornea healthy, and do you sometimes need more than one? And that can be the case, and often people do need a transplant in both eyes with a lot of the conditions that lead to needing a transplant. Another really great question that I just want to answer in the from Maureen is if the transplant takes place in the same place that the donation did, in the same state. And sometimes that's the case, but that's definitely not always the case. Cornea donors can be in the same state, sometimes different states, sometimes a different country in some cases. So it really, it can really vary depending on where you live and what those circumstances are.
Yeah, Sight Life, we are able to fulfill the corneal needs for our regions. So after we fulfill all the recipients who need corneas, unlike organ donation, there is no waiting list. But after we fulfill those needs, if we have corneas, because they have a 2-week life, and if they're stored correctly, they can really only be stored for 2 weeks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so then if there's nothing here, we do look elsewhere because we want to make sure that the desire of the donor, and we want to honor that decision. So then we will look elsewhere. We'll look to other countries, other states. So
Wow.
yeah.
And that's one of the beautiful things about corneas is for most other organ transplants, you have a matter of maybe 3 hours for, if it's a kidney or heaven forbid a heart. Corneas are much more transportable, and the donation can live longer and serve more people. So it's another marvelous reason to consider.
Yeah. And I also want to mention, Peter was talking about the Lions Club in his region. You all have had experience with Sight Life, including our recipients, but there are other eye banks there, and the Lions Foundation is one of those. We are the eye bank here in Washington State, Montana, parts of Wisconsin, parts of Pennsylvania, parts of California. But there are other eye banks out there. So, and some of you may have had experience with other eye banks. Maybe you've had a donor family, in New England or Florida. So, yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry to have to say this, but Rebecca, we are actually approaching the end of our time this evening. Which I'm again so sad to say, because we've had so many great questions and it's been wonderful hearing your answers, and your stories have been so thoughtful. If we didn't get a chance to answer anyone's questions out there, just please feel free to send it to Rebecca, and I will share our information here in a moment, and we will do our best to get those answered for you, because we are here to answer any questions you have that do come up. We are absolutely a resource for that. But we really want to thank our recipients and those who are in attendance today joining us. And we really hope that what was shared was inspiring, educational, and hopefully connected you to the spirit of hope and of healing.
And if you liked tonight's event, guess what? We offer a lot more opportunities to stay connected with the donation community. We have webinars, some like this one, some a little different. We have donation celebrations throughout the year. And then, of course, we have Eye Donation Month, which is in November. And there are lots of events and a opportunity for us to come together like this again.
And to our donor families who are here with us tonight, if you don't know, we have a private donor family Facebook page. We also have a donor family newsletter, Kaleidoscope, and that is again for donor families, and that next edition is coming out this summer. So we're happy to send you that for those who aren't receiving it already. And we also have our donor family connection circles, and those are smaller virtual gatherings, and those are held once or twice a month.
You can support donation by celebrating Donate Life Month. Tomorrow is Blue and Green Day. So if you would like, please dress in blue and green and share your pictures on social media. We'd love to see you in blue and green. You may be able to see some of Stacy and I. And if you decide to do that, please use these hashtags, hashtag Donate Life Month, hashtag Cornea Champions, hashtag Be a Donor. We'd love to see you. And really, I just want to say it is Blue and Green Day tomorrow, but any day is a good day to advocate for donation. We urge you to talk about it with your own community. Share your experiences. Share some of the stories you heard tonight. Talk to your loved ones about your decision regarding donation.
And finally, we also want to encourage you to share your stories. We want to learn more about your loved ones who gave the gift of donation. You can always do that by reaching Rebecca and I via email. You can also just send something to our general message to us at donorfamilyservices@sightlife.org, because we want to hear all of your amazing stories and more beautiful photos like this one of incredible donors.
Yep, we love stories. Early next week, we'll be sending a recording of this event and some other key Sight Life links that we shared tonight, like the Facebook page, how to share a story. So please look out for that. Also, there's going to be a survey. It's a short survey. Please fill it out. It helps us better serve you. And thank you all so much for being here. We really look forward to connecting again with you in the future.
Yes, thank you to everyone, and we wish you all a good night.
Bye.
Hey, see you around.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
Good
you
night.
all.